There we go. Thank you very much. The second phase is what's called the community engagement phase. And this phase is, this phase is the phase in which we will be reaching out as a committee to the community following a communications strategy and engagement strategy. There'll be a lot of different opportunities. We'll hear about this a little bit later in the program, Mr. Chair, but there'll be different, a number of different engagement opportunities to allow the community to present the information that we are studying right now and that we're drawing conclusions on right now as a committee. Allow that to be presented to the community, allow the community an opportunity to ask questions and to scrutinize that information, and then ultimately allow the community to go from there if, based on a committee recommendation, there is a vote, an administrative decision, there is a vote to make a decision with respect to incorporation. This particular graphic is on the website, the study website, which is RDOS Regional Connections. We can show that a little bit later, but this graphic shows really the process in which we are engaged in initiating the incorporation study. It was the first one that's been completed. We're in the current phase in yellow there. That's our analytical phase, our technical phase. We'll go to community conversations after this, and that's going to be our engagement phase. And then a final report on incorporation from the committee going first to the RDOS board and then from the board to the ministry to make a recommendation on whether to proceed with a referendum. And if a referendum is recommended, the province would determine that and initiate a vote then in the spring of 2025. The study is being conducted by this group around the table here today, the Incorporation Study Committee. And the committee has a number of different roles, really to oversee, to scrutinize, to endorse, and to guide the consultant, the technical consultants in doing the analysis and in presenting the information with the committee to the community, to engage in the community then, as I noted, with the assistance of the consultants, and then also ultimately to make a recommendation to the board of directors of the regional district. And it goes to the board of directors first because this committee, while it has been struck as a result of the province agreeing to undertake the study, it is a committee ultimately of the RDOS board, and so it makes a recommendation to the RDOS board. The RDOS board will then consider that recommendation and make its own recommendation to the province on how to proceed. That gives us a sense, Mr. Chair, of the purpose of our study, the process we're following, and now we're going to move into, if that's okay with the committee, Mr. Chair, move into the materials on this evening's package.
Yep.
Okay, wonderful. Oh, and I will just mention, Mr. Chair, we did have our provincial representative, Simon Rasmussen, join us just as I was midway through my comments. No, that's okay. He just joined us a moment ago.
Okay.
Yes, so we are good. So welcome to Simon.
Thank you.
Excellent. We're going to discuss, Mr. Chair, we're going to discuss a number. I'm just going to clear my screen here. Sorry about that. Okay, let's try that again. We're going to go through a number of different things. I'll put them all on screen. The full agenda package went to all committee members and was posted online a week ago. We don't have copies in front of us today, so some of us don't have copies in front of us today. So we will go through in some detail then just remind committee members and those from the public who have had an opportunity to review the information in there, remind everybody of what it is we're looking at any particular point. We've also got our screen in front of us here, which will take us through the different parts of the service sheets and so forth. So we'll move as quickly or slowly as the committee wishes. But we will start with the demographic profile. We then get a demographic profile, beg your pardon, and then we move into our different service sheets. And we've got 4 service sheets to review with the committee this evening. The first relates to solid waste services. The next is economic development services, parks, recreation, and cemetery services, transportation services, and then an issue sheet which deals with the incorporation impacts on agricultural properties, of which there are a number here in the Okanagan Falls area, of course. The demographic profile I'll get to in a moment. I will mention, though, Mr. Chair, just with respect to the service sheets that we have in front of us this evening, all of the service sheets are created to look on a service-by-service basis at the implications of incorporation. What that means basically is we take every service or area of services provided today to Okanagan Falls, whether those services in most cases being provided by the regional district, or as we'll see coming up at our next meeting, by the provincial government. We take those services. We don't anticipate changes that a new council and a new municipality may make in the future to those services. Rather, we say, if those services were to remain at their existing levels today, and we were to change from an unincorporated status to an incorporated status, what would happen to that service? How would that service change in terms of the provision of services, or the provision of that service, the governance for that service, who makes decisions, the cost of that service, and the local tax impact of that service. So we go through service by service on our different service sheets. We build the different blocks and we bring them all together by the end of the study to give a broader picture, a consolidated picture with all the different services together of what a new municipality would look like in terms of those implications compared to what we have in place today. So we try to do it one service at a time, or one area of services at a time. And we'll deal with 4 of those different service categories today. We'll just, and I will mention just very briefly, 2 of the sheets that we look at, in particular, economic development services and parks, recreation, and cemetery services. We do have some assumptions in there that we've made. We have to make assumptions on all of our different sheets. We've made assumptions in those 2 particular service areas that we do need to test on the committee. We need to defend our rationale for the assumptions we have made, and then we need to listen to the committee and have the committee either endorse the assumptions we've made profile. You may recall, Mr. Chair, that at our last meeting, some members of the committee asked if we could have some kind of cheat sheet, as it were, or some kind of profile sheet to give a sense of the Okanagan Falls community as it exists today. So we tried to do that. We got on this profile here, a 2-page profile in our package that you've seen online and in digital format. But here we are. We've got the first one. The first left-hand side kind of talks about the population, 2,760 people, the average age and the median age, and we can see that we're a little bit older on both of those measures than the provincial averages. We've got our number of dwellings and the number of dwellings, which is 87% that are permanent as opposed to seasonal residents. We've got our different kind of dwelling mix of 50% single detached, 30% multifamily, 20% movable. Our average household size is 2 persons per dwelling. And then we move on to the right-hand side. We see the size of our area, about 1,100 hectares. Our average income and our median income a little bit lower than the provincial figures. Our assessment base, which is always an important consideration to make when we look at an incorporation study area, because any municipality, a little bit less so for a regional district electoral area, but certainly for a municipality, any municipality wants to try to ideally have not only a robust overall assessment base, but an assessment base that is somewhat diverse. It doesn't just have residential. And so we see that we do have a nice kind of healthy amount of business and light industry, not a huge amount, but better than in many different areas of the province. If we look at West Kelowna, for example, when that area incorporated, it was 97% residential. We're at about 89 or 90% residential, 89.9. And so there is some diversity there. And we look at our average residential assessed value and the number of the farm properties and business and industry properties. So that gives just a bit of an overview of the community as it exists today and what different conditions are in place to think about as we consider, as the committee considers the potential of a change in governance from unincorporated to incorporated.
Anybody, any committee member have any comment about the demographics?
When you're considering this, that we've got 26% of our men and 22% of women in age 20 to 55. Like, does that mean anything to you? Like, do you use that information when you're providing us with?
Not particularly. That gives just an overview of kind of the community. So it's a little bit in the eye of the beholder. Some people are going to read into the fact that, okay, we've got a younger community coming in, or we've got potential for more families coming to the area. That may be of interest to folks, to the committee members as they think about conditions for a corporation going forward. It's not something we particularly look at when we present the information. We do bring it to the attention that one of the things that may be more important is the assessment base, as I mentioned, which is always a factor when we think about a corporation. The average incomes, depending, so there's going to be some sensitivity around there about the ability to take on extra taxation if there is a change in taxation as a result of the corporation. Those kinds of factors may be more important than the breakdown of the demographics. The overall number of people is going to be important because as we get closer to certain trigger points, we start to take on the responsibility for services that we wouldn't otherwise take on. So police being the big one, if we were 5,000 people, a new municipality would take responsibility for that. And there'd be some fairly significant taxation impacts. At 2,760 people, we're nowhere close to that. So that should tell the committee, okay, we can know with some confidence that there's going to be some time before this community got to that point. So we don't need to be too worried as a committee about looking at potential future policing costs anytime in the near future.
That's all.
Okay.
Any others? Okay, thank you very much. Oh, sorry.
I just think, I wonder if it would be helpful to have comparisons with other municipalities, maybe just a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller, just to.
Sure. Yeah.
So that when you look at this, you don't like 2,760 doesn't look like a lot of people.
Yeah.
If you know that Karamias
Yes.
has only got 1,800 people.
Yeah.
Princeton has 2,800 people,
Yes.
and they're both full-on municipalities. That might make you feel a little more confident.
Absolutely.
That this isn't, you're just not too small.
Yes.
The difference in status, of course, is that Karamias is a village and Princeton is a town. And that makes a difference. You know, your population makes a difference of how you go,
Yeah,
right?
I just meant,
Everybody.
yeah, they're.
In terms of incorporation.
They're both, all three of them.
Yes.
Yeah, maybe Mr. Chair, I could just make a quick comment on that point if I could.
Yes.
Director Taylor's quite right that there are many municipalities in British Columbia that are smaller than 2,760 people. In fact, if we look at the Kootenays, there's Warfield at 1,750. There's Midway. There's a number of different places. There's Fruitvale, there's Montrose, there's all those different places. Now, some of those places arguably are not as robust in terms of tax base and others, but there's others that are larger than this that would be less robust than some of these stats would kind of suggest for Okanagan Falls municipality. So the number is there's nothing, let's put it this way, there's nothing to suggest that the 2,760 people, that would be a showstopper for any type of incorporation effort should the community wish to go there. It can easily be sustainable at that level with other conditions in place, such as business and light industry and so forth. Does that help at all? Or?
Yes.
Well, Mr. Chair, like, all I'm getting at is, that's great in this room, but if you provide it on that diagram
I see.
and just show by those little circles or something comparative, then the reader will feel that, not just the people in this room.
And maybe, Mr. Chair, with the committee's indulgence, what we could do, because and we do know, by the way, that all of our materials are listed as draft until the committee endorses them or endorses them as amended or with directed amendments. One amendment the committee could make is to ask us to put on there, and it's quite easy for us to do, where, if this were a municipality, where it would rate in the number of municipalities in the province. How many would be smaller than that? How many would be larger than that? That's of interest to the committee. We can certainly do that.
Yes,
Okay.
request that. I move to add it to the draft.
Okay.
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 Yes.
Next item of business is the draft service sheet says super. Now, as pointed out, we'll start out with the solid waste services.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And unfortunately, you have to hear me for a little bit longer. Then I'm going to pass it over to my colleagues. So just in terms of solid waste, the committee will note that we start every fact sheet, every service sheet, excuse me, with some assumptions that we've made. And so in this case, we have one assumption. And that assumption is that a municipality for Okanagan Falls would continue to participate in each of the existing solid waste services that are in place today. And those services are provided by the RDOS. And they're provided to more than just Okanagan Falls. And so what we're suggesting is if Okanagan Falls were a municipality, it would participate as a municipality in the same way that Area D as an electoral area, which is Okanagan Falls, participates today. And we'll explain that as we go through. Our current situation, when we look at our service overview, just zip on there. We've got a number of different services in this portfolio of services. The first is curbside garbage and recycling, and that is provided throughout Area D, but it's also provided in other areas as well of the regional district. And right away, because it's provided to more than just that particular area, we see some economies of scale. We've got a number of different smaller jurisdictions that come together to say it makes sense for us to provide this service together and to contract it together. So that's one that we've got. There's yard waste in there as well that's collected every other week. Weekly garbage collection, every other week recycling collection. There's also a yearly pickup, so 1 day every year on 2 bulky items. We've got solid waste management, which is a service that every regional district has in place. And in fact, it's a mandated service of the regional district. So that's one in which we would have to participate anyway as a separate municipality. That's a service that every regional district has to have in order to plan for the broader waste management approach, solid waste management approach of the regional district. It includes looking at different landfill plants and so forth, and how the regional district is going to, and every regional district for that matter, is going to start to move towards more of a zero waste outcome. Landfill operations is another service in this portfolio of services. There are 7 different landfills within the RDOS. 4 of them operated by the regional district itself, including one here in the just on the edge of the Okanagan Falls area. That one is actually one that doesn't take residential waste, but it does take wood, yard waste, and metals and so forth, construction waste. And that's the excuse me, that's the Okanagan Falls Sanitary Landfill. The residential waste from this area goes instead to the Campbell Mountain Sanitary Landfill, a little bit further north in Penticton. Another service here is illegal dumping, which is a regulatory service that many places offer in order to try to curb illegal dumping. So those are our services. All of the decisions for those services are made at a board level for budgetary purposes and a participants level for operational decisions. So all of the different at the board, all of the different participating jurisdictions participate in making those decisions as the operations of those services. For budgetary matters, it's the full board who makes those decisions. As I mentioned earlier, we do have a private contractor for the curbside waste, and so that's Waste Connections of Canada. Got a large contract in place to do all that residential curbside collection. The 4 regional landfills are provided by or delivered by RDOS. Excuse me. And in terms of what is spent on the service, let's move on to that one. We see that we spend about a little over $5 million through the RDOS on these services every year. But the big one there, landfill operations, a lot of these services are landfill operations, garbage and recycling, curbside, and so forth. Those 2 in particular are recovered entirely by user fees, tipping fees, those types of fees. And so we don't see those show up on our tax requisition. So those would continue to be operated in that sense in any new kind of situation going forward. Our tax impact, because we do have some tax, we have tax income to bear. We do have rates owing on the amount of we don't have a residential rate, but we have a tipping fee, or we have a fixed fee for our garbage and recycling on a $500,000 assessed home, of $135 for our curbside. Our waste management and our legal dumping, very small services. So right now, a taxpayer for a house, our home assessed at $500,000 in this area. And I appreciate, again, going back to our previous discussion, that no one person in this room will have a home assessed exactly at $500,000. But when we look at the average for the area based on all the data we have, that's the average assessed value. And that's about $140 a year for these services. Going forward, into incorporation, we don't see any changes in these services because frankly, it just makes sense for a new municipality, particularly a smaller municipality, to continue to participate through the regional district in these services, both to get economies of scale, as it relates to the curbside collection, but also from the waste management, because it's a mandatory service in which all jurisdictions have to participate. And the other one are quite small services that just would not likely be advantageous for the municipality to take on, given that there's not a different place already. So we suggested that the services will continue, the portfolio of services will continue and will continue to be provided through the RDOS. The municipality would become a member participant in those services. We suggested that governance, that is decision-making for the services, wouldn't change. It would still be done by the participants, of which one would be the municipality, and then by the full board for budget, and that the cost would not change for and the impact on the homeowner would not change either. So when we look at those costs, we see parity across both options. And so in essence, then, in answer to the question of what difference would incorporation make for these services? Zero.
Very good.
Okay.
Any questions about the service sheet for solid waste management?
Sorry.
No, don't be sorry.
That's a
Ever.
little question, but on your search for this, the study that has been going since May of 2023 is now at 20 months. Did you get any idea from when the solid waste, new solid waste management program might be coming out? Did anybody ever slide that information by you?
Okay, this is and Judy is referring to the contract to update the solid waste management plan awarded in 2023 at a cost of $120,000. And when is that study going to be done? In essence?
I know,
Yes.
that's just a little question. But I'm not-
No, it's
Yeah, and I'm just gonna double check, but, that it's still underway. I don't know when the end of that was supposed to be. I know
Whatever,
that it's-
whatever it
yeah.
is, we're just gonna flow through to whatever that.
And like, if that were to end and had any sort of, we would add that in before we go to our engagement phase anyway. So we do try and keep them update, but particularly if there's new numbers. But yes, that's the information we have.
Is there two options available, like agreeing with your overall concept that we're gonna stay for in the system? Is that so municipality could agree with the RDOS to just flow through that way, or the municipality could stay connected independently?
so the
Is that confusing?
no. So when we look at the different that portfolio of services, we've got our curbside pickup in our city. So that's one that the municipal council would say at the end of the contract term, let's pause. We're going to actually look at our own contract now and not actually run that through the regional district.
Okay.
That would something to look at the time for sure. It would be it's hard to imagine that they would get a more cost-effective arrangement because they would lose those economies of scale. That said, then when we move on to different service, the solid waste management service, that is a separate service under the regional district, and that's one that is a mandatory service. So every jurisdiction, City of Penticton, a new municipality here, Area D that exists today, is a member of that service. So the difference would be that Okanagan Falls as a municipality would be a member of that service, but compelled to remain in that service. So that study, Judy, that you referred to, that started in 2023, is for the entire region, and Okanagan Falls would simply become part of that study as a separate municipality, but it would still be through the regional district.
Okay with that, Judy? Okay, any further comments or questions?
Except you would have two votes instead of one.
You would have two votes in the sense of because you have a 500 person voting unit. Yes, you're correct. So you'd have two directors at the table. Yes, assuming that voting unit stayed in place, and let's assume it is. So yes, 2,500. Yes, you have two votes.
Municipalities can get a vote,
Yes,
and the remaining areas can have a vote.
true. And even in a weighted system, because you have more than one vote for your director as well. You have that anyway. So yes, you would have, so whereas today for area D, we have one vote at the table, you're right, with one director. We would have area D and Okanagan Falls member there, so you got the two votes for the broader area, for the same area today.
You know, 2 out of 21 is not much different than 1 out of 20, but
And you're assuming those two ones together?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's true.
our fault wouldn't have to vote the same way anymore. So,
Now, having said that, not to go off on too much of a tangent, Mr. Chair, a person, and I'm not suggesting this should be Director Taylor, but a person could be both a mayor of a municipality and the electoral area director and get two votes. There is a precedent of that.
Is it?
Oh, there is.
Okay.
In Pemberton.
Oh, that's weird.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's probably.
I just want to
Good
know.
on. Good job.
Okay. Oh, Mr. Chair, so we, and as you know, we like to get
Yes.
endorsement from the committee if possible.
Yes.
Okay.
I think we're finished. Everybody's okay? Then we need a motion to endorse the draft sheet for solid waste management. Jean, second by Judy. Okay. Any further discussion? Seeing none, or question, all those in favor? Endorsed. Moving on. Second, draft service sheet before us is the economic development services. Alan?
Great, I'm gonna have Sherry introduce this one and speak to this one if we could, Mr. Chair. Go ahead.
That's fine.
thank you. Yes, economic development services. Presently in Okanagan Falls, there are two services that the community participates in. One is a regional economic development, and essentially that's a service that is provides a contribution to the Okanagan Film Commission. And the Film Commission is a service that provides a film library and crew database of experienced workers for film, and it provides it not just to the RDOS, but also 3 other regional districts. So there's an amount that's contributed to that service every year, so that's done regionally. And then there's a service that applies to just Area D, so Area D economic development. So that's concentrated on trying to attract business and industry to Area D and including Okanagan Falls. Right now, the entire area of Area D participates in that service. There's 1.5 FTE, so 1.5 people that are working on this service right now, which includes the support from the senior and the administration staff. They provide the service from Okanagan Falls, so from the Community Development Office here in the community. And the decisions on both those services currently are made by the entire regional district board. And partly because the regional service is a region-wide service, so the entire regional board makes that decision. And on the other one, the Area D service, if you remember back, anytime you have a service that only has one participant, the entire board makes the decisions on those services. So the Area D Economic Development Service decisions are actually made by the entire regional district board. Who delivers the service? I mentioned that it's done internally by the RDOS. And what is spent on the service? There's the cost there, the $35,000. Again, that's the contribution to the Okanagan Film Commission, and that's again contributed. That's the portion, not just Area D, but that's the entire regional portion. And then the Area D Economic Development Service is about $170,000. You can see that the majority of that comes from tax requisition, and all of the contribution to the regional service comes through taxes. The Film Commission does get some money from the province, but that portion showing there is what we contribute to through taxes. What would change if we incorporated? So the regional service is easy because it's a regional service. The new municipality would continue to be a participant in that service. They would continue to help make decisions on that service, and so nothing would change there. on the cost side or the decision-making side. With the economic development area D service, here's something that we need to kind of make a decision about or make an assumption about. Okanagan Falls, just looking at the pattern of where the growth is able to happen. So Okanagan Falls has the majority of the industrial and business lands in Area D. They are the growth center through the regional growth strategy. They're more likely to experience more of the growth and want to attract those businesses and industry to their community. So it's likely going to be an important service for the municipality. So we've assumed that the municipality is going to want to lead that service and provide that service themselves. They have the majority of the population, and arguably are the ones that are more likely to benefit from bringing businesses and industry to the area, as well as tourism. So the municipality is likely to want to support that service and make decisions on it themselves, guide the service themselves. So the question becomes how, not just who's providing it. So we've assumed that the municipality is going to provide the service, but at what staffing level and who's going to contribute. So if the municipality provides the service themselves, it now is up to the rest of Area D on whether they would contribute to that service. So you could assume that Area D wants to also benefit or also does benefit from economic development to the area and increase tourism and increase development, and therefore will want to participate and provide some money towards that. Or you could say, no, that's not going to be likely. They might be more likely to argue that they don't benefit from bringing more industry and development to Okanagan Falls and no longer want to pay into that service. So we've looked at it and assumed if the municipality provides the service and no longer gets that contribution from the remainder of Area D, then if you want to keep funding at that same level, you're only going to fund about half time, so 0.5 FTE. So half a person's, their job would be maybe doing business licenses and economic development. You'd no longer be able to fund 1.5 people solely doing economic development if you didn't have that contribution from the rest of Area D. There are opportunities that we've referred to in the service sheet that they could explore, like other funding opportunities. There's a tax that you could have on housing. There are different things they could do. They could go after grants to try and build that service. But if we are to maintain, if that's our goal, is to keep costs down, we're really going to be funding only half a person without contributions from the rest of Area D. So we could either make a decision that says, no, we think that this is an important service. We do think that the municipality will want to provide it, but we think we want to keep the same sort of staffing levels, in which case that number is going to go up. Or we say, okay, we're okay with starting out at that same base service level or the same cost level, recognizing we're only going to be able to fund 0.5. Or the committee could recommend, hey, we think all of Area D is going to want to continue contributing to this service, and that's going to be our assumption going forward. We have some decisions to make. So we've started from the assumption that we aren't wanting to, increase our costs substantially. So in some ways, this is the same service level. It's not really, it's the same cost, but we will have less people dedicated to that service. Or we could say, let's keep the same 1.5, in which case that number is going to change and it will cost the municipality more.
Yeah.
My question revolves around the original legislation that's coming.
For those making comments, please speak up so we can hear it at the back.
Yeah, sorry about
Thank
that.
you.
So my question revolves around the provincial legislation that's coming up that says every lot in British Columbia cannot be a fourplex lot. So we have a number of lots, and there's going to be, that's all part of economic development, correct? Can maybe, maybe not. We've got the old warehouser site that was promised to be a little bit residential and a little bit more manufacturing, light or heavy. with some retail. We've got Penticton's average age going up, and they're looking at closing schools. How are we, this committee, gonna look at all of those things in relation to your question about, do we go as standard status quo? Or do we leap off the deep end and be aggressive in terms of our own economic development, knowing that currently we have one vote out of 20, I think you said?
Yep.
Or maybe we have 3 people or 4 as a city council going, we're going after Apple, we're going after Amazon, we're gonna make our community completely open to new business, as opposed to going, let's gotta go to the RUS board and get Taylor going to the constituency, but the other 22 going along, we're voting for the same stuff. Right, there's that bigger mix of swirling goo that happens. Like, what are we gonna do? I guess, because that's all out there. It's not, we're not living in a little silo of open calls of 2,700 people. Those are questions that I was thinking about, listening to you, reading the service sheets, and going, wait, we have an opportunity for Airbnbs. We're under the 5,000 person threshold. We can scoop everyone from Penticton and bring them on down for tours. Right? There are so many opportunities. We'll just have to decide, like you said. And that's a challenge for us.
Yeah.
Sorry, that wasn't a question, more of a statement. But it's in my brain.
Can I?
Okay,
I'll
just
go
a
through
minute, just a minute. You have some?
Well,
And
I'm gonna clarify,
We can't hear you, Matt.
I'm gonna clarify that economic services presently has been changed mid last year and is now really community services. It's primarily a portal into RDOS activities for the residents of the. I supported that decision because I felt developers already knew where we were. And in answer to your question, Weyerhaeuser site has been bought. The developer is converting it and is pretty much ready entirely as industrial. It's not residential. We have house builders with numerous projects already. So that was my thought. We needed to minimize our cost and we've reduced a little bit. And it's more of a core into government services. You can go there for just about anything and get a preliminary answer to your question. But it's not doing a lot of economic development per se, and it really hasn't since August of 2022. Okay. We're still wrong.
Ian?
I'm wondering if it's possible to take all the different scenarios. So business as usual, the 0.5, I think you said people, and then, and then a 1.5 or higher, and then compare those 3, because I mean, we don't know what will happen, but to have an idea of all 3 potential cases might help us kind of grasp this area a bit better, because I mean, it is just an estimation at this point. We don't really know what will happen, if the community will decide if we appropriate or not, but having the most information on the table based on the different scenarios, I think would be beneficial for us.
And, sorry, just to add that, I can tell you right now, so I just have the internet number, and tell you what the number is, I don't have it yet, so the 37, like, assuming it stays the same, that is assuming that Area D doesn't pay, and like the rest of Area D doesn't pay, and that, and we go down to 0.5 instead of having 1.5, or the same assumption would apply if Area D does pay, in which case you can be at 1.5. So those numbers will be the same.
Okay.
But I can ask other questions get asked. I'll let you know what the number is for
Thank you.
That was me.
You okay? Judy?
I've got a few questions. Is it 1.5 really encompassing Kim and Debbie and the support from Martin Street. Is that number seem right? To you now?
Again, yeah, I've reduced it a bit last year and I've reduced it a bit more now. My intent is to be open 9 to 3, 5 days a week.
That's one plus yeah.
And-
That number does seem right. My second question is Okanagan Falls is the only place in Area D where there is commercial activity. So if the other people in Area D in Heritage Hills and Basketball Lane said, no, we don't want to contribute to that, can they just do that? Like, is it likely, would it be likely that the other 19 board members would say that this makes sense? Really, that area, Okanagan Falls should be paying for all of this service relating to commercial development.
I was saying, maybe I can speak to that, Mr. Chair. Yes, they can do that because the way that we operate as we go forward with this type of study is we say as a committee, our starting point as an assumption is that all of the services currently provided by RDOS are going to be, local services will be provided by a municipality. There will be different services, and the municipality will have, if there's an existing regional service, the municipality will always have the ability to participate in that regional service. So if we look at solid waste for the garbage collection, that's one in which there's an existing regional service with or without Okanagan Falls. Okanagan Falls is a participating member municipality in the regional district could opt into that service, could participate in that service. In this particular case, it may be a bit different because we're saying here we've got Area D economic development, which is for Area D alone. And Area D right now, without Okanagan Falls, the rest of Area D could simply say, well, there is no service then. There's no regional service. There's not going to be, we wouldn't have Okanagan, we would have an economic service without Okanagan Falls, because as you pointed out, this is where the business is here. So that service would go away. So we have to then say, okay, as a municipality, or as a committee, we can make an assumption that it's going to be a municipal service, and that's the assumption we made here because, well, a number of reasons. One of which is the economic development kind of plan that has been created for Okanagan Falls, which talks about the importance of economic development. So we thought, notwithstanding Director Taylor's comments, we thought that there was some value then in having this service, would be the desired form of this service. For an economic development service, irrespective of how it looks today, there would be a desire for that. So our assumption was then that the municipality would choose to develop to have its own economic development service. The alternative would be for the municipality to say, and Ian talked about this, for the municipality to say, we will surrender our autonomy to the regional district to make decisions on the economic development of Okanagan Falls. And I think we've taken the approach that if the community chose to incorporate, it would want to have authority over those decisions. And therefore we would have a municipal service. But to all the way around back to your question, Area D could approach Okanagan Falls and say, we would like to participate in that service through some kind of contract, not through the regional district, because Okanagan Falls, you're not offering it, you're taking it away from the regional district, you've made it a municipal service. But we feel so strongly that we are connected and that we benefit from that we would like to participate in that. I suspect that they may not take that approach. Yeah.
So if
Okay, my Secretary Taylor.
I just continue with Matt, do you want to?
Go ahead, Judy.
So
Finish up.
to my understanding, if in the community services office, there's very little economic development done. But so do you need to actually assess what is being done by Kim and Debbie and whether that does relate to all of Area D before we can actually answer this judge's sheet? Because if it was just economic development, I think it would be quite easy to say the rest of the Area D doesn't want to participate. If however, it's no, that's not right.
I didn't say anything.
No, that's okay.
I'll do that when I get a chance.
It's not be
Finish your,
right.
finish your chain of thought.
That
Train of thought.
might not be right. If it's community services, it may be that South Lake and so on, they do benefit by having that office there. So it could be an entirely different decision on the assumption as to whether that cost actually doubles or whether it stays the same.
And Mr. Chair, it's a very good question. I think it does, notwithstanding Director Taylor's points, I think we had understood, and he's got a better lens on this than we have for sure. I think we had understood that it was more, that, economic development, first of all, is one of those services where it's in the eye of the beholder. There's no, it's got such a broad possible definition of economic development. In some cases, and not to go off on too much of a tangent here, but really everything the local government does to some degree has an economic development purpose. That said, economic development services, a capital kind of ED, economic development, tends to be things like, how do we promote this community to potential investors, to bring money in, to bring investment and jobs into this region? If to the extent that the current service does that, then it would be an economic development service that I think, and this is what we had understood, that the municipality in our assumption would want to take over and control, make decisions over. If it is simply, as Director Taylor noted, a service that connects residents of the regional district to regional district services, that's an entirely different thing. So to your point, Judy, we may need to kind of take this one off the table for now, go back and get some more information on that. And I don't want to speak. I want to let my colleague chime in on this first, because she's a lot smarter than I am. And just comment on that before we commit to taking it off the table. But Chair, I wonder if I can put it on the spot.
Well, I mean, obviously the numbers and the description of what that money is being spent on is right from the budget, right? And that's coming from Jim, and I have like a breakdown of the 15 different categories that money is being spent on. So that money is being spent. It's not like we are guessing what that number is, and it's under a service that is described in the bylaw for economic development. So there are only certain things that it can be spent on. And one of the things that I think Director Taylor is probably also referring to is how that office is being used. And that office is sort of only one aspect of the service. But yes, how that service is shaped and what we want to do. And I mean, from what it sounds like you're saying to me is that maybe 0.5 FTE might be the right service level for a municipality starting out. And then all these decisions, and we don't want to go too far down the path of imagining what a new municipal council might think or might want to do down the road when suddenly their lots are being developed with 6 and 4 units and they're growing or they're not growing. I mean, those are the kind of things that an economic development service can respond to, right? But you do have an economic development plan for the area that has some very specific goals in it that have not yet been met, like a waterfront plan and focusing on making some changes in your parks and a variety of different goals that were articulated in there that normally an economic development service is trying to push those goals forward, and then often take a look at them. Are we achieving them? Do we want to go in different directions? And so that's already in place, but yeah, it's just sort of trying to figure out what assumptions we want to make for this new municipality on how they would move forward. And just to sort of close the loop on the analysis, if we were to assume that none of Area D was paying in, but we still had 1.5 FTE, the number would, instead of 3653, would be 7251, I think is the number. It's almost double, really, because you're getting almost half dollars from the rest of it.
We did planning last time.
Yes.
About, extra density and all that. There was a separate service sheet. I don't think copies of this.
Well, often And oftentimes in smaller municipalities, your director of planning and development is also the economic development officer in small communities. So that's often one that's coupled together.
Through the other comments.
So just,
Emma?
I'm just, so right now, you talked about Apple and Amazon, so Amazon's fishing around for some place to go set up shop. And they approach the Okanagan, the RWS has control on it, right? Because they're doing our economic development right now. So we all get together, there's 21 votes or 20 votes, and we want it, Summerland wants it, Parramatta wants it. So we have to vote on it and try to get it our community, right? And it's up to the voting process in the RWS again. But as a municipality, we don't have to worry about them. We go chase them ourselves.
Yep.
Right?
That's correct.
That's the aggressiveness. It's not.
Yeah.
Sure, I wonder, just based on conversation, which has been very helpful, I think that and particularly Director Taylor's suggestion, and correct me if I'm wrong, please, that the 1.5 right now, given the office and everything, while there is some support for economic development, there's also maybe some other things being worked on under that budget that would not necessarily, would be more of an RDOS portal kind of thing. So it may be appropriate for the committee to consider then what we've set out here to say, we're going to kind of look going forward at the same status quo costs with fewer human resources, recognizing that the resources that would be supported under this budget would be only economic development and not an RDOS portal as well.
Right. Well, that's right. Yes.
That's fair.
Okay.
So if there's no further comments about this service sheet, we would need a motion to endorse this service sheet or not endorse the service sheet. And send it back for some extra clarification in terms of dollars spent for economic development only as a municipality if they were to expand the service, which is purely conjecture on our part, unfortunately, because we won't have that say.
I'd like to make a motion that we do not accept as is, but look at doing the revisions as has been discussed and being presented again at the next meeting in March.
I'll second that one. You can go ahead. All right, thanks, Judy.
Who's got it?
I'll take it.
Okay. Further discussion? All those in favor? Carry. So you'll come back next time with a different scenario
Okay.
of what it would mean if municipality wanted to go forward with both service. And then we'll figure it.
Yeah, and I think, Mr. Chair, I think next time what we really, because we always want to try to make sure we are not anticipating too many decisions of a new council. So we'll try to really tease out in the existing service what the economic development contingent is and what the other contingent is, and then look at bringing forward the economic development contingent. What would that cost be?
I think that would be beneficial.
Would you be able to tie that into the demographic profile where you could add the analysis of other communities of similar size and see what maybe they're spending on their hecto if in a municipality, and just to see if they have 1.5 full FTE people in there, like Collegian or somewhere similar size? Would that
I think we can give a few examples.
Okay.
It's only because it's very easy to go kind of down a rabbit hole when we start doing that, because especially with something like economic development, everybody kind of calls something economic development, but it means so many different things. Yeah.
Just to see similar communities of similar size, maybe if they have a budget or what they're spending. I mean, everybody's activities can be different, but to kind of have like a broader idea of what similar size communities are spending on it, even though Okanagan Falls is an anomaly, we've got a lot more going on here than most other places.
Yeah, and I think the only caution I would give, Mr. Chair, is that we need to be careful as a committee not to anticipate decisions that a new council may make. So even though Collegian or even though Karamios may, and I have no idea what they spend, but let's just say for the sake of argument, Karamios has two people on economic development. Good for Carameos, that's great. But right now, if the reality is we have 0.5 people devoted to economic development, that's kind of like going from 0.5 to 2 is gonna be a decision of a new council. You know what I mean? So it's almost better for us to figure out what would 0.5 mean for the tax base of Okanagan Falls and how would that translate into property tax cost? And then leave it up to the new council to say 0.5 is way too few, we just gotta go to 2.
Yes.
One other thing I would like to add, if at all possible, and it's kind of a pie in the sky. If we're attracting economic development, whatever it may be, like industrial, heavy industrial. Looking at the average age is 54, the median age is 60. We would probably be looking at a younger demographic coming in. And what sort of an impact would that have with the economic development coming into town? What would that mean for, for housing, for schools, for whatever else, we're able to generate? Because if we're starting, light industrial, most of the population is either semi-retired, retired. And most of us are really not wanting to go back to work. So it's going to be a younger demographic that's going to be coming in. So, what do we do for schools? What do we do for housing? What do we do for?
Schools are not our realm, so
No, I know,
I
but
don't have to think about that too much. I think we should move on. We've sent that back, just a minute. We've sent that back to the consultants to have a look at another number that reflects more people involved in economic development, and they'll bring it back to us. I think the motion was carried. Last one.
So in the information that we've got here, we've got a tax requisition cost of $185,000, which that includes those community services and portal services. So we can't just let those disappear. So where do they get picked up then?
It sounds like, Mr. Chair, it sounds like those costs, let's keep in mind that those costs are costs paid by the entire Area D, not just Okanagan Falls. So those costs, it sounds like from Director Taylor, that some of those dollars are spent on a service that provides connection between residents of Area D and the RDOS. So to the extent that's needed in Area D going forward, it would be up to Area D then to say, we're going to create a new service called RDOS Portal, for the sake of argument, and we're going to put 1.0 FTE in that service. And so those costs will get picked up there. But for our purposes, it's what is the act, and this is why we need to go back and tease out a little bit of those 1.5 FTEs or of that $185,000. How much of that is actually spent on what we might call economic development versus kind of a portal to RDOS local government services? And once we're comfortable with what that number is being spent on economic development, that's our starting point for a municipality. That's what we say. That's what we bring over and say, what does that then really translate into from a tax impact for a taxpayer in Okanagan Falls based on that level of service? Changes to that level of service going forward are going to be up to the new council. And we want to be very careful about making presumptions around that.
Absolutely. Do.
But issuing dog licenses and that also has to be picked up.
Sure.
But that's a different realm.
And that's going to be in our different services.
Okay,
Yes.
that's what I was asking.
Yeah,
Is
you got
there a different service sheet that
But-
just move that?
When we come to administration, I'm pretty sure that's what that's. Well, some of it's already been, I think.
Yeah, through bylaws. Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, animal services. is our-
Okay, let's move along. Parks and Recreation. is the
Okay.
Next,
Thanks,
service sheet.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. We're gonna have Sherry's gonna do this one again.
Jerry? Laura, yours.
Yes, so, Parks and Recreation. So there are two main services that are provided through Parks and Recreation, three services, because we included the cemetery. Three services provided on this service sheet. The first one is a regional parks and trails service. So there are 9 regional parks in the RDOS as well as some trails. So it's actually kind of even a trail service, but there are 9 regional parks, 2 of which are within the Okanagan Falls area. That's Lions Park and Kenyon Park. So those are regional parks, and the funding for those is provided by the entire region. Similarly, decisions made on that service as a regional service are made by the entire regional board. The cemetery service, I'm just going to skip over the other one in a minute. The cemetery service is the service that was part of the Okanagan Falls irrigation district that was transferred over to the RDOS in 2023. So it was looked after by that defined service area that was part of the irrigation district. It's now become a regional district service. It's entirely encompassed by the Okanagan Falls Incorporation study area, so it's within that boundary, and it looks after the cemetery and just maintains the cemetery. The other service is the Okanagan Falls Parks and Recreation. It's provided to a subset of Area D, so not all of Area D pays into that service. We have a, sorry, I didn't start with the assumption. There, that's the service area that those are all the properties that contribute to the Okanagan Falls Parks and Recreation Service. So it really just goes up just past Heritage Hills, but then goes down to Vaso Lake. And they contribute to the service, and that provides all the other, there's I think five other parks all within the Okanagan Falls area, and then there's one park that's up here in Heritage Hills or in Heritage Hills. So there are 6 parks that are part of that service, as well as all the recreation services. So the programming that they provide through this facility, as well as just services and programs for recreation. Who makes the decision? So on the regional service, as I mentioned, that's the entire board. Again, it's also the entire regional board that makes the decisions on Okanagan Falls recreation, because it's only provided to one electoral area. So again, you have the entire board making decisions, but those decisions are informed by the Recreation Commission. So they do have a commission that provides some input and advice on those services. The cemetery, again, is a service that's provided to only a subset of one electoral area, so the decisions are made for the entire board. The costs of these services, so the regional trails, most of the funds are coming from tax requisition. So, that's the same looks like one of them is not entered, but so the regional trails and the parks and recreation, those are both the regional trails. That cost is recovered from the entire region. Parks and recreation, you already saw the service area, so that is only recovered from those properties. Those ones are paying into that service. And Okanagan Falls Cemetery is even smaller. It's just the pretty much the same boundary as the incorporation study area. Right now, we're paying about $226 on a house that's valued at $500,000. So that's quite a lot of money, especially on the Okanagan Falls Parks and Recreation Services. Yeah, so recreation is generally an expensive service, and it's made more so because it's, again, not all of Area D that's contributing to that service. So the big decisions come with what happens in incorporation. So the 2 easy decisions are on the regional parks and trails. Your municipality would still be providing towards those regional services, so there would be no change there. The cemetery, as once incorporation happens, because that boundary would be entirely encompassed by the new municipality, it would become a service of the municipality. So that would be funded not just by that specific service area. I think there's actually only one property in the incorporation study area that's not encompassed in that. So they would also then start contributing to that service. But again, that becomes a municipal service. And the question becomes, what happens with the Okanagan Falls Parks and Recreation Service? So some of the key questions to think about is who should provide the service, and then who should pay into this service. So this is very similar to our discussion on economic development. We have laid out, we have started with an assumption in this draft, is that we would argue that it would normally be the municipality that would provide that service. Our reasons for thinking that is because, again, go back to the number of parks, within the Okanagan Falls Incorporation Study area, 5 of the 6 parks are in that area already. You have all the facilities in this area where the programs are offered. As part of incorporation, you would also get from the Ministry of Transportation one of the road ends, which is like a water access. So really most of the assets, the park's assets would be within Okanagan Falls. You also have about 70% of the population of Area D that are within those boundaries. So often parks, particularly with some of the connections that were made in your in the Okanagan Falls Economic Development Plan, between creating connections with your parks and using your parks and improving the standards of some of your parks as an attractor for families and some of those linkages. Often municipalities want to be able to control that service, particularly if they see those linkages between economic development, which seem to be quite prominent in your economic development plan. So we were thinking that, yes, this is probably a service that the municipality wants to have some say over, and that they, to your point earlier, Ian, don't necessarily want 20 regional district representatives making their decisions for them on. So that was the assumption that we were starting from, is that it would be the municipality providing the service. The next leap is who's paying into that service. Is it just going to be Okanagan Falls, or is it the same service area that currently has agreed to contribute to this service, recognizing that this is the community that's providing their programming and their recreation services. So because there is a defined service area that has already at some point agreed to pay into this service, that was sort of the starting point that we were starting at, is that the service itself and the programming that we're providing, the amount of funding that we're assuming wouldn't change. So we were kind of coming from the starting point of, let's assume that the rest of the service area continues to contribute to that service. Arguably, maybe the area outside doesn't want to contribute anymore. You would still have, you would create, as long as you have contributors from Area D, you would still create like a parks commission, so that Area D has a seat on that and has some ability to influence decisions, because those decisions ultimately would be made by council and not the RDOS board. So you would still have some sort of governing body that would accept input and advice from Area D, because they would be contributing to the service. But the alternative for Area D would be that the service would be divided up. You would have Okanagan Falls have a service, and then you would have a service to Area D where they would have the park that they have in Heritage Hills. So that would be funded separately. But arguably, they might not have the ability to participate in programs within Okanagan Falls for the same price. You know, if they come to register for something, they might have to pay the outside Okanagan Falls rate, or because that's often the case where outlying areas, you don't want what's called free riders, where they're not paying for the service, but they come in and use the service. Often when municipalities and the outlying areas can't agree on some sort of service arrangement, you get some conflict, and you get the municipality wanting to have 2 different service costs, that kind of thing. But it is quite common to have municipalities provide a service and the outlying areas to contribute to that municipality providing the service, like in Trail and in Enderby and in Princeton has that same arrangement with their outlying areas. So that's, again, it's totally up for debate. It's but it's a starting point that we've started for in saying, yeah, let's assume the rest of Area D does contribute, but yeah, we're open to discussion on that topic. There's not necessarily, yeah, it's not as strong a rationale in my perspective, or from my perspective, as maybe the economic development argument. But yeah, anything else?
Yeah, no, I think Sherry's captured it very well, Mr. Chair. I think that really the assumption of of the full area D or the full existing service area paid towards the municipal service is based on the argument of access to service, and it's also based on an equal access to service, and also based on shared governance through a commission, as opposed to decisions being made at the regional board.
That said, though,
Uh,
sorry, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, go ahead. So,
That said, we're paying $37 for community services and economic development, and $226 for parks and recreation.
Yeah.
Right, so our bang for our buck, if we turn around and say, well, we're gonna spend $37 on parks and rec, $226 on economic development. That economic development will allow us to cover the cost of parks and rec. That's kind of how my mind works, but that's just.
Yep, and I think, again, Mr. Chair, I think a new council can totally make that decision.
Yeah.
We can't.
We can.
That's right, exactly. Any further comments, discussion?
If you look at Oliver and Area C, they collaborate on one, they run their parks together.
Yeah.
And they have chosen over time and looking at cost to migrate the delivery of that service from RDOS to the municipality. And that choice is to go back and forth. If you look at areas B and G and Permias, they also collaborate on their parks and rec services. So I think that's a reasonable assumption. And so that leaves you staying right where you are. And I think the Oliver thing would say, you could do it that way and probably you'll find that you're getting it done for a little bit less money at the end of the day.
Donna?
I have a bunch of questions. So Sherry, I'm wondering, first, I'm wondering on the first page, there's a typo in that you've got Area D has 8 RUS parks, and one of them is Garnet, but I can't find 7 parks in Okanagan Falls. I can only find 6. But I think that just makes me.
Okay.
A transfer, 7 parks. Of which 6 are in Okanagan Falls. So when you looked at, is there a bylaw or some, how is it that, Lions Park and Kenyon are regional, but Christie is local? Yeah.
I mean, they would have been created as part of the regional service. So, most of the regional parks would have been funded through that. So if they were purchased with regional parks money, they would be regional parks.
I was just gonna say, maybe just add a little bit to that, just for further clarification. When we look at local government park services or regional park services, we have kind of, and it goes right back to one of our earliest discussions, in fact, on kind of how regional districts are set up. And you recall that we looked at 3 different types of services they provide: regional, sub-regional, and local. The local ones, when it comes to the parks, if we look at different types of parks, local parks tend to be smaller parks with some kind of playground or some kind of active recreation. Regional parks, on the other hand, tend to fall into a couple of different categories. One would be very large natural areas with hiking and those kinds of things, or smaller kind of beachfront areas, specialty areas that tend to be more expensive and tend to have a very broad benefiting area in the sense they draw people from way farther than just the local population. And so so often a regional district, collectively, the members will come together and say, let's have a regional park system that will include some of the big properties, but also some of the smaller specialty properties that have a large drawing area, a large attraction area. And that would be a case of some of the parks, regional parks here in Okanagan Falls.
So is this written somewhere?
Yes.
Because I will say I was very surprised when I read this, because Christie was many years ago gifted to the province, and the province has gifted it to the RDOF, except for a waterfront, which has a 22 Nissan. So how that becomes a local park seems confusing to me. Whereas Kenyon, the big part of Kenyon was purchased on up to a referendum, and the debt is still being paid off. Identical to the land property, which is local, but Kenyan is regional, so I didn't follow the consistency of that. And so, as I'm understanding this, the reason this comes out to having the same cost is because there's an assumption that the municipality will pay the equivalent that is being paid now for the Lions Park and the Kenyan Park, and the regional district will pay for the other 4 parks in Okanagan Falls, keeping it all consistent. But I'm not sure that it makes sense to divide the waterfront parks between having 2 separate government bodies.
They already are, so they're already separated, like the two regional parks are funded from a separate fund that is contributed to by all of the RUF.
I think they're in the Okanagan Falls area, D Parks and Recs, on Matt, and we'll turn this back to you.
Maybe that's something we could just get you to look into.
Yeah, they're
Because I-
listed from the regional district as regional parks. And they have a separate regional parks budget that we all pay into. They're
So how would this,
like, and they're in the most recent master plan listed as regional park. Yeah.
So I'm just confused as Judy is, because I think the public for the area purchased Kenmore. I do not, I would really encourage you to check that one out, because I don't believe the regional district bought Kenmore.
Yeah.
So, anyways. Not gonna resolve it tonight.
Yeah, yeah.
would that have impact on the?
I don't think it affects the budget.
No, I mean,
It just affects who owns the park. So,
and yeah, so, and either way, like so the budgets are already set, so either way, and the assets that if the municipality was created and was looking after its own parks, the regional district, well, that would be the difference, is that they would, usually the regional district would not transfer their regional parks. They would transfer their local parks to the municipality to look after. Often they will contract the municipality to look after their regional parks in that area.
So even though the provincial government gifted it to the RDOS would not gift it us.
Well, it would be transferred, well, not if it's a regional park. They wouldn't come.
But the government gave it to the RDOS as a regional park.
And if the already,
That's Christie you're speaking to about, right?
I'm not, I'm just throwing it out there.
Let's not throw things out, but
That's, I think you're speaking of Christie. That's the one that the provincial government transferred to the RDOF, except for the foreshore, which is on a 22-year lease.
so my question is, would that have any impact
On
on this number here? Of whether or not
Yeah.
the services here are there, would it affect the number?
Well,
if that particular piece of, let's put aside for the moment who purchased it, just for the
Yeah,
moment.
yeah.
If that particular part is being provided by the regional district through the regional park service, as opposed to Area D local park service. Is in the local park service?
funded, but it's funded by the local. It's funded through Area D Parks and Rec. All parks, Lions, Canyon, Christie, Keogan, they're all funded. All the grass is cutting, all the trees, etc.
So,
through Area D service.
and then not credited back because the regional district, like the regional district has gone through the service sheet and made all the changes it needed to, right? Like, so these have already gone through the regional district and read, and they were the ones that provided the information. So anyway.
Hey, I can be wrong.
And oftentimes, like, so there are often agreements as well, right? Like I will have a credit back, if I look at a budget for a service, right? It will have a credit back if, Yeah, there are hours from this one that went to this one and, yeah.
Based on the information that is in our package here.
Yes, the numbers
Cost
should be,
of service,
yeah,
in either scenario, comes out to these numbers. Is that correct?
that is correct.
Okay, so
But I think there's a very big assumption being made, and that is that, or not, that the residents of Heritage Hill are gonna pay for the municipal parks when they have their park there.
how is Heritage Hills going to pay for anything?
Well,
in
it
the
is, area,
municipality?
all of Area D is paying for the Area D Parks and Rec Commission parks,
That,
all 7 parks.
Yes,
And so we become a municipality and 5 of those parks, then the municipal parks, are the other residents of Area D going to continue to pay for those parks?
and,
I think it's a big question.
yes, and going back to our assumptions, that is the assumption we have made, and the reasons we made that boiled down to a few reasons. One was that we have in place right now that service area that everybody has paid into for those collective parks. That means right now, under the current system, everybody within that service area, so it's not actually all of Area D, but that service area within Area D, which includes Okanagan Falls, Heritage, Basso, those areas collectively pay for the 7 parks that make up the Area D local park service. The decisions are all made out of Penticton because it's an Area D only service, so they're all made at the regional board, but it's everybody pays into it. We've suggested going forward, there are a bit of a fork in the roads. We either say the municipality is on its own for the 5 parks or the 6 parks within its boundaries. Heritage Hills is on its own for its park, and Basso Lake pays for nothing. And then the consequence of that, likely in the municipality, and we have lots of precedent to show this around the province, is that Okanagan Falls says, well, okay, if you're no longer contributing to the ball diamond, if you're not contributing to the subsidy that we give to people who take classes at this facility and in other parks to kind of deal with recreation, then you don't have the equal access on the same term, or you're going to charge differential rates to those different areas because we can't abide by the free rider.
Yeah.
So the alternative is to say, okay, everybody's agreed to pay. This is like one broader service. Is going to be based out of the municipality instead of the regional district. But we recognize that people outside of the municipality in Area D and Heritage Hills and Basso can't be expected to pay without having some participation in decisions. So we set up a Parks Commission, of which there are many examples in the province, to allow for those voices to come into the decision-making table. And we continue then on as a collective local park system, which happens to be called Okanagan Falls Parks Service, which provides service to Heritage Hill, which provides equal access to everybody in the service area, and which keeps intact the current service area that pays towards the broader service. So the argument is, the benefit then is that you've got equal access to service at the same rates, and you've got a say at the table through the parks governance, the Parks Commission. It's an assumption, absolutely. There's no right or wrong answer, but that's why you get paid the big bucks. You get to decide.
The parcel are larger than that.
Absolutely.
Would it make sense just to have the information available? This could be a really important service area when it comes out to public consultation. Would it make sense to actually do the numbers of testing with an alternate assumption?
We can tell you. Yeah, no, it's if we did the other assumption, we know that the cost of providing of Okanagan Falls municipality itself today, the cost of providing for the 6 properties within Okanagan Falls would be about $300 per household instead of $200 per household. So it would be a real 50% increase. And that's because we've got a 59% of the tax base here. We've got 65% of the population, but about 59% of the tax base. And not, and so that means that every household here within the area is gonna pay more, which would, by the way, be a motivator for the people paying for that service to say, we are going to have differential fees. We will not provide the same access at the same rates for people not paying that tax. And, we will not involve others in decision making. So it's a little bit of a, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. Kind of deal.
Would that be put into the fact sheet at the window addendum?
We can do that for sure. Yeah.
without a recommendation.
I think we can do that from an information perspective. I think for us to kind of move on, however, with the analysis, we need the committee to kind of declare one assumption over the other. Providing that information for transparency, absolutely. But making a declaration one way or the other, an assumption one way or the other, and then we can qualify that as we present final numbers with assumptions on which these final numbers for the entire municipality are based are such and such. And if the community has issues with that, then there's a discussion of the community engagement part of it.
So you said that the taxes will go effectively $100. Say $100 because it's even. So as a resident of Great Falls, I'm looking at that, even though it may or may not be true. But conversely, as a resident of Basque Lake, I'm looking at my taxes are going down.
Yeah.
Because I'm not paying for that service that I may or may not ever use in my lifetime. Right, same as Heritage Hills. So I'm just not sure putting that $300 number into a fact sheet, because everybody in the whole universe can look at it, is a prudent thing to do. For the fact that it would scare those people back there, it kind of scares me, and it's probably not going to be based on everything that you've said. Everywhere else, say Oliver's worked it out, Karameas has worked it out. It's not like it's going to be this between us and them. I just don't see that. So I'm just kind of cautious of throwing out numbers because, well, this or that. And that's just my personal statement.
So the motion we're about to make should endorse one assumption or the other. If we're going to make a motion to use this assumption, so be it. You want to make a motion?
I'll make that motion, that we go with what it says that.
Okay, it could be changed. Seconder? Ian? Okay, any further discussion? All questions? All those in favor? Carry. Using this assumption. Sorry? Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, your worship, your. Not yet.
No, that's not gonna happen anyways. Moving on to transportation services. Quickly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, Victoria, go ahead.
Transportation services. So this should be fairly quick. Transportation services is essentially transit services. The key assumptions that we've made in this service sheet is that the Okanagan Falls municipality would continue to participate in the existing Area D and regional transit services, and that there would be no changes to service route frequency levels or service costs as a decision, as a result of a decision to incorporate. So there are two types of services that we're paying into right now in Okanagan Falls. One is Area D transit, and that provides you with your local routes, that Route 21 that's just in Okanagan Falls, as well as Route 20 that goes up the east side of the lake. And it also provides regional transit, which sort of extends from the southern communities all the way up, actually connecting through to Kelowna, but mostly connects Okanagan Falls to Penticton. So those are two separate services. They're both provided by BC Transit. Decisions on both services are made by the full RDOS board right now, partly because one is a regional service and the other one is just provided to Area D. Again, delivered by BC Transit. The costs for the service right now, yeah. So, well, either the service for Area D is actually quite large for just Area D, but the tax requisition is about $113,000, and regional transit is about $227,000, and that translates into about $33 for an average house for the Area D transit service, and only about $3 for the regional transit service. So with incorporation, there would be the ability for a municipality to do something differently and have their own contract themselves with BC Transit, but there's no real reason to assume that they would do that. There are economies of scale, there are larger contracts, so we've just assumed, again, having that consistent service level, those current services, they are already actually in the transit plan. There are plans for the service level to increase a little bit, so that would be assumed to continue. There would be no change. So the end result is that we've assumed consistent tax contributions under both scenarios.
Yeah.
This goes to all the services and it just popped into my head when I was reading this at home. It says on the sheets that it does not include a 5.25% surveyor tax fee.
Yes.
So is the RDOS number there? Is that inclusive of that 5.25 for unincorporated municipalities?
So that's a very good question. Thank you for asking. 5.25. So you guys pay for the fact that the services in the electoral area are, those taxes are collected by the province. So you pay this 5.25% fee, which is not included on those numbers, but we do calculate it and it will show on our administration sheet, which will be at our next meeting. And so you'll see this number that based on whatever taxes you're paying at the end of the day in a regional district or in your electoral area, you pay, $40 on your tax bill. It actually just goes to the surveyor of taxes. And then in the municipal scenario, they do their taxes themselves, but they will have to provide people to do that. So that will have its own cost that gets absorbed in that administration sheet. So it will be shown, but it's in none of the numbers. To try and compare apples to apples as much as possible.
Thanks. Any other comments? Motion to endorse. Sheldon, second. So. Any further discussion? Being done, all in favor? Carry. Okay. Corporation impacts on agricultural.
So on this one, then, really, most of our time as consultants briefing the committee and providing information to the committee is focused on service sheets, because that's where we get to show kind of what the implications are for provision, governance, and costs and taxes. Surrounding all of that stuff, however, are some different issues that we try to kind of capture at different points. One we've talked about already, way back at the beginning, was governance, how the decision-making system in the regional district differs from the municipality. We talked last time about a different issue sheet. I can't remember which time that was, but it was a very good issue sheet. Anyway, this one is equally scintillating and is on agriculture. And I don't mean to be facetious, because this one's very important in a community such as Okanagan Falls that has a fair bit of ALR land and farm class land. So let's talk a little bit about that. When we look at the implications or impacts on agricultural properties associated with the corporation, we have to look at a couple of different angles. We need to, first of all, understand what the property tax exemptions are for agricultural lands and improvements. We need to look at the agricultural land reserve, the land commission. We also have to look at farm class properties. So the agricultural land reserve then As I think everybody knows here, but just to make sure we're all on the same page, it is in essence the provincial zone for agricultural properties, for agricultural, the protection of agriculture, the protection of farm and related uses in the province. And so it takes lands that have high production value, it takes them out of kind of the regular land purchase market, puts it in a different market, as it were, puts different protections on it, and uses that as the vehicle to ensure that British Columbia continues to have the capacity to grow food and to grow related products and wine and all those other great things on agricultural land. The commission is the body that's created by the province to administer to the agricultural land reserve, to consider requests for removing lands or adding lands to the ALR or changing uses of lands in the ALR. And then separate from that are farm class properties. Farm class properties are a class 9 under our assessment system, and they're a separate tax classification that says, and it's based really on a property's use within an agricultural area. So it's whether or not that use is focused on the production of farm or food and related products. Farm class properties can exist and do exist in the ALR, but they can also exist without ALR protection, and vice versa. You can have ALR that is farm and that is not farm. So they're slightly different. They often kind of coexist, but they're different they're different ideas. And it's important to make the distinction between agricultural land reserve and farm class because you get slightly different taxation implications as they relate to each. We'll talk about those, and those are covered in this issue sheet. When we think about property tax exemptions, we want to first of all kind of think about the ALR and the farm class, and we different exemptions exist: partial exemptions and full exemptions, charged to pay for different local government services. So. Most of the exemptions that apply, most of the taxes that are paid, most of the exemptions that apply irrespective of whether an area is located in a municipality or an unincorporated area. There are some exceptions, however. So, but if we look at those as kind of a category, first of all, we see that on the table here, which is reproduced from the issue sheet, we've got the tax exemptions on ALR land and on farm or class 9 properties, both for electoral area and incorporated. So you've got the tax authority in the left-hand column, provincial government, taxes locally for school and police. Land that is both in the ALR or either in the ALR or farm class gets 50% exemption on its value from taxation in provincial taxes for school and police tax. Residence gets no exemption. So your residence on your land gets no exemption, pays the full tax. Your land pays half the tax, or the tax on half the value. Regional district taxes, we've got the RDOS services, our local government taxes right now, 50% exemption from the land, or on the land, no exemption on the residence. Hospitals and the library, same thing. And then the other are BC assessment, MFA, same deal. So 50% exemption on the land portion of your tax, of your valuation, and no exemption on the residential portion. So that's kind of our starting point on this stuff. When we look at the taxing authority, then we've got a number of different taxes. We've got the provincial tax. We've got the province provides, as I mentioned, the schools and the policing. Also, our rural property tax, which becomes very important as we go forward. Regional districts, they have theirs. The municipalities pay a general municipal tax, which also is important when we start to look at implications for agricultural and implications for farm class properties. And then when we look at incorporation, here's where we are with the land in particular. We'll talk about buildings in a moment, but when we look at our different taxing authorities, provincial versus municipal, we see that the provincial rural rate, which is what we pay in the electoral areas in Okanagan Falls right now and Area D right now for roads in particular, that's the tax we're paying, the provincial rural rate. In an unincorporated area, our land is a 100% exempt. In an incorporated area, of course, it doesn't apply because it's only charged in electoral areas. So our provincial rural rate, we get 100% exemption on the land, on our land for agricultural land and for farm class for farm class land in the area. In the municipality, so basically then what we're saying is if your property, if you're class 9 farm and you are located outside of a municipality, if you're in an unincorporated area, an electoral area, you get 100% exemption on that farm class, on that class 9 land from the provincial rural rate. The municipal, once you're within a municipality, you pay a general municipal tax and you don't get an exemption on that. So you start to pay a tax to the municipality, your general municipal tax. The amount of tax is going to be a decision for the local council to make. In some places, it's a small amount. In other places, it's equal to the residential. It doesn't typically go above the residential, but it can be kind of between those. So you will pay a tax, however. So right away, we see an implication for property owners of class 9 farmland. Thank you, the residents.
Yes, the residents.
When we look at the tax, when we look at the buildings, then we see a slightly different thing. So our land is 100% exempt from the provincial real tax, no exemption on the municipal. When we look at buildings, we still have that same exemption with the provincial rural. This is for farm class 9. We get some exemption on our buildings within a municipality. We get 87.5% exemption, so on 12.5% or $50,000. So the 87.5% exempt or $50,000 exempt, and you pay tax on the remainder of that. But the exemption in provincial rural rate within an unincorporated area is 100% exemption. So we see that for farm land and farm class land and for farm class buildings, you have an advantage to be in an unincorporated area and not an advantage to be in an incorporated area because you are paying towards the general municipal tax rate there. Oops. So the long and the short of it then, Mr. Chair, really is as it relates to farm class 9 properties. Again, when we move from an unincorporated area to an incorporated area, we lose a certain tax exemption that applies to class 9 properties. If you have an ALR property that is not also class 9, no difference. If you have an ALR property that is not class 9, your level of exemption or lack thereof in an unincorporated area is the same as in a municipality. But farm class 9, you have a greater exemption in an unincorporated area than you do in a municipality. That shift happens around the province whenever there's an incorporation. The province, in recognition, I suppose, of the hit, it also then says there's a 5-year phase-in period over which any loss of exemption is factored in. But that at the end of that 5 years, you've lost that full exemption on that farm class 9. When we get to the community engagement portion of the study, we will be showing different sample property tax impacts for different types of properties. And we'll have a couple of residential with different assessments, including the $500,000 assessment we're using as the average in our assessment. We'll have some other assessments as well. We'll have a business one and we'll have a farm property as well to demonstrate kind of how the difference is going to play out in the taxation. Keep in mind that we're dealing with specific taxes here, not the entire tax bill. So in other words, when we look at our entire property tax bill, we have provincial rural rate, we then have several different regional district rates, we have a regional hospital rate, we have a school rate, we have those kinds of things. We're dealing with the provincial rural rate as a portion of that. Same with the municipality, we have our general municipal rate, and then we have our provincial rates that are paid, and then we have our regional rates that we pay towards regional services. So we're not dealing with the entire tax bill, we're dealing with a portion of it. So what may sound like huge impact here is it's still an impact, and we'll demonstrate that, but it's perhaps not as large as it's sounding as we present this. But there is an impact as it relates to these particular individual taxes for farm class 9 properties.
We can keep it 100% as exempt. The city council in the future, 5 years.
They can choose to do that for sure.
We're not going to do that. So I believe we need to make that known as well, because I'm looking at that going.
Yep.
Farm 9 guy and my taxes are going up 12.5%. So that's, right, so I think we should make it known that in the future, should this happen, our assumption is we're not gonna assume. Because it's between 87 and 100.
Yes, you're quite right, Ian, that the full impact related to the Farm Class 9, as you correctly stated, is going to be a function of, it's going to be determined by the municipal council's choice of tax rate for that class of property. One of the things about municipalities versus regional districts, you may recall from right back in the committee kind of orientation boot camp that was put on, was that in a municipality or in a regional district, let's start with, there's no authority for an individual regional district to set different tax ratios. So it kind of sets those ratios. So the province sets those ratios. At a municipal level, the council gets to determine how much each class pays and what the ratio is between and among those classes.
However, I just want to add that as a farm class property, your residence, if you have a residence, is still assessed as a class 1 residential property. So when the municipality sets its rates, it's not going to 100% exempt here, because it's going to set the residential rate as one residential rate that applies to every resident or every property that has that class 1 on it, including your farm class property. So they may have a very low farm rate, but you're going to get a fairly low farm rate anyway, because you already have the land keeps it, all those exemptions we had in the first chart, it keeps those. But the one that you're going to lose is the one that's on the house. It's just on the house that's on the farm.
And that's no different than, any tax increase by the regional district and by the province as is. It's based on the residents.
It's based on what uses you have on the land. Yeah. We don't have any, the municipality doesn't have any control over that, it's BC assessment.
Any other comments? Motion to endorse this issue sheet?
Sure.
Joe? Second. Excellent. Any further discussion? Interesting information, actually. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. That's the end of the service sheets and issue sheets and the demographic profiles.
Indeed. And I'll just mention, I'll just show on the screen here, Mr. Chair, if I may, that just to remind the committee that last day we looked at all of the different individual services within the different portfolios that were featured in the service sheets of last day. And we see there I'll just move that for a second. We see the hold on a second. Okay, well, behind that bar are the implications for last time, and the implications for this time are there. Oh, there we go. Well, we've got a small savings on the cemetery. Well, we want. Okay, hold on a second. There we go. Okay, you can say, oh, geez, not far enough. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yes, you can get a sense there. Most of the ones, and we'll come back with economic development as the committee requested. Most of the ones we don't see a change, and for all of the reasons that we've outlined, except when it comes to cemetery, and that's because we're dealing with a slightly larger service area, which would consist of the entire municipality. So we'll keep this list running as we go through. We've got more next time, of course.
Okay. You should also introduce Natasha.
Yes, okay. Let me just unmute her. I'm gonna unmute her here, like just 1 second. Okay. Oh, can you hear us, Natasha?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, thank you.
Just wanted to introduce you as the communication expert.
Hi, everyone. Am I good to talk a little bit now?
Yes, please.
Yes, okay. Okay, well, thank you. It's nice to talk with you all again. I think it's been a couple months. And so I'm just going to give you a little bit of an update on the communication activities that have happened since the last committee meeting in November. So we've done 2 editorials in the local newspaper as well as an advertisement in the local newspaper. So those are happening every month in the Skaha Matters. So there was the December publication and the January publication. And those Rick's editorial covered the topics, why is the committee neutral in December? And then in January, he did an editorial talking about service sheets and sort of what are contained in those, which 5 are finalized, which ones were being discussed at this committee meeting today, and the ones for March. And then we did advertisements about just a general in December that the incorporation study is happening. And then in January, we ran an ad with the study timeline in it. So that's kind of what's been happening in print communication. And then I wanted to give you an update as well on what material's been posted on the website. And I just want to check in, am I speaking okay and you can understand me clearly?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. So updates on the website, the November 21st committee meeting minutes, the draft minutes are on the website for people to read. The 5 approved service sheets from the November 21st meeting are on the website. We've done 4 sort of like news posts on the website. So one was an illustration document talking about study participants and who they are and what their roles are. We did 1 post again talking about service sheets and what those are. 1 post for like a happy holidays, we're taking a little bit of a break. And then another post about this committee meeting and what's being covered at this meeting, how to sign on, etc. The explainer video is also, it's a static piece right at the top of the webpage. And we had 1 citizen post a question asking whether there would be tax impacts of incorporation. And so we've responded to that. There's like a question and answer section where members of the public can submit questions. And so we've only had that 1. And we just responded, letting them know that that's indeed the purpose, part of the purpose of the study is that work is happening right now to determine whether and what those tax implications might be. Right now, we've got 42 people subscribed to receive, connected to this topic on the website. And we've sent 2 newsletters out to people who are subscribed to the topic. So that's kind of the website stuff. I wanted to let you know a little bit about our website traffic. And so I can look sort of like over time at where we're getting increases in views and stuff. And it looks like we're having spikes in website views, like every time we post a bi-weekly topic or we advertise about a committee meeting. So the highest number of visits to the website in one day was 40 visits. And that was a couple of days ago. So I'm expecting that interest was around this committee meeting. And then the lowest number of views in a day is 0. And that happens fairly frequently. Like there's numerous days where there's 0 views of the website. And there's other days it's kind of a range of like 2 views, 10 views. Like we're not having huge web traffic right now. We've done a couple of social media posts. We're not doing a ton of social media right now. It's kind of being balanced with the rest of the RDOS stuff for the whole regional district in social media. And we'll definitely increase the social media presence once we start having community events and opportunities where the community can kind of like participate more. And then I did also want to highlight that I think Rick, Mr. Chair, showed the explainer video in December at, I believe it's called the Okanagan Falls Community Partners Meeting. And maybe Mr. Chair, you want to speak about that? I'm not sure.
No, not really. It was good information.
Mm-hmm.
So I encourage everybody to go to the website. I mean, that's where all the information is going to be for the public to entertain.
And thank you for showing the video.
You're more than welcome. It was well received in the meeting I was at.
Great. That's awesome. And that's exactly the purpose of the video, is to kind of be like that 2-minute explainer so that we don't individually have to be just like reiterating that same basic background, because it gives a little bit of a visual along with the verbal. Alan or Sherry, is there anything you want to add to that? I've got a couple questions for the committee, or 1 question for the committee after this update.
Yeah, I think Natasha, could you just outline a little bit without getting into all the details, but just maybe just introduce the communications and community engagement strategy, where we're at with that? I know that a draft has been produced. And maybe just give a sense of where that's at in the system and when it's going to come back to this group.
Yeah, thank you, Alan. That's great. So we are developing a communication and community engagement strategy, and the purpose of that document is really just to articulate key audiences, key messages, and key methods or ways that we are going to reach those audience to deliver those messages over the duration of the incorporation study. And you might kind of think, well, why are we only developing that if we're kind of, 6 months into the study already? But really, a lot of what we've done to date, as far as the news ads and the social media and stuff, it's captured in there as well. But this document is really trying to help us gear up for, plan for, and be consistent when we deliver mostly the community engagement portion. So that document, it's about a 15-page document, and it is in draft form right now, and it will be sent to the communications subcommittee of this committee in the next few days, looking for some feedback on some very specific questions, which I've got noted in the document in comment form. So for the subcommittee members, please look for that shortly. And we'll be looking for your feedback on things like, do the key messages make sense to you? Are they worded in a way that you think, folks in the community will understand? Are we missing any key audiences? And then I've got very specific questions about potential venues and best dates for various community events. And that document will be a living document, so it will be updated and refined as we go throughout the incorporation study. Anything to add, Alan?
No, I think that's excellent. Thank you. We'll bring it back to this community to share next meeting.
I think that video presentation to be brought back to each committee member or each committee meeting is a good thing to do as well.
Great idea.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's a great idea. And then I had one question for members of the committee, and don't feel like you have to jump in, but if there's anything top of mind, are there any hot topics or frequent questions you hear percolating out there that you think we need to address, potentially in one of Rick's monthly editorials in the newspaper, or maybe through one of our newspaper ads? I'm just trying to get a sense of if there's anything you think we really need to target, or if there's misinformation, or maybe there isn't, because this really isn't the most active period as far as the community engagement, but just this is kind of like an open floor if there is anything you want to share around that.
Anybody? I see nobody. We'll just carry on.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Natasha.
Thanks. It was nice to talk with you all again, and I'll talk to you again in March.
Look forward to it.
Thanks, Natasha.
Take care. Thank you.
Okay. I think that just about wraps up our session this evening. Alan, do you have any closing comments?
No, I just a little bit about the next meeting. I can throw that in instead of, and ahead of any questions, if you like, Mr. Chair, just ahead of questions from members of the public. Just very briefly, moving forward or looking ahead, our next meeting, as you mentioned, is in March 19th. Right here again, we'll start at 6 o'clock as we did today. It'll be online. It'll be it'll be open to the public as well in person. We have 5 service sheets we'll be bringing back. In fact, we'll bring the economic development back as well. So that'll be 6 in total, 1 back and 6 new ones. The 5 that we'll be bringing, the 5 last ones we'll be bringing are the ones that in some ways are well, they can be the meatiest, and they can take some time to go through, and they're brought at the end because it takes time to bring together all the different numbers and data from the different agencies, including the province. So we will be bringing water, sewer, administration, and that relates to the 5.25% admin fee that is charged by the surveyor of taxes. And we'll compare that to what it would be within a municipality. The policing, local policing, and the local road, which is the big one. We will also deal, if there's time, we'll bring back an issue sheet on the on the transition, how the transition from unincorporated to incorporated happens. What's the process that's followed? That we may leave till April 16th because we're a little worried about making March 19th two-pack. April 16th, just look ahead to that one, Mr. Chair, and that's going to be where everything comes together as a 7-year budget for a new municipality. There'll also be worked into that budget what's called the provincial restructure offer, which is the offer of assistance that the province provides to a jurisdiction that is considering incorporation. And that offer recognizes that as a jurisdiction, as a community moves from unincorporated to incorporated, it does take on some additional costs, roads being one of those. We'll get to that in a bit. And or next time, and the offer mitigates some of that cost in time. So we'll lay that out as well, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Sherry, do you have anything?
Nope, I'm good, thank you.
Well, we will.
Pardon me,
Sorry.
was there a
Just
suggestion?
a moment, please. Just a moment, please.
Right.
Thank you. Matt, you have something?
I'm just wondering when the third-party assessment of roads.
That will be, that happens, that's almost complete now. We just heard from our engineer today. He thought it was going to be complete by the time we finish this meeting. And that will be then worked into and brought forward with the local road sheet next time.
Okay, we will open it up to the public. If you have any questions, we would be pleased to try to answer them for you. Gentleman standing there, you have a comment?
Okay, I think there's some mention. But some, I know there's.
Before we start, sorry.
I think for the incorporation, good idea for. Need to understand that. You should.
Now speak up a little bit. Could you speak up a little bit, please?
Okay. We should be able to get. Federal government grants and things like that, maybe provincial. If we were incorporated out in the Lone Ranger out here. And so that's what my thought was right now. So you mentioned, I'm sorry, your name?
Sherry.
Sherry?
Yes.
Are you the president tonight? Anyway, about the roads, I know there's a lot to be done with roads. You see it these days, all the time. But that would be something in being incorporated. We'd have to look out for most of the roads in our new area, other than east side or maybe the highways through town here. That would be still highways, right?
That's correct, the highway would still be looked after by the ministry, but the rest would be the municipalities.
Just quickly, I think you're going to get up onto this on March 19th, but it's been keeping me awake. And that, so we have to buy equipment to look at our own roads, right?
Or you could contract a contractor that has that equipment, we have that option.
Okay, that's good enough for now on that. I know for water, Straw States for a boil water thing, it takes you back to the 1920s, putting the cattle on the stove. So I don't know what we do. Well, I've heard RDOS would like to take over our water system, and I have some inside information on that. Our sewer system, I don't think will ever happen because that got to be a super expensive project when I was on that committee for about a few months. And so not to worry about that, but our other thing, just as not a question, but a query. With this plan system, I was on that committee. And, at the end of quite a few meetings, we had transit rep come out and they informed us that there's no way that was going to get changed. And the reason we were trying to do some changes of that, maybe not get rid of it, was to make the charge for transit on our tax bill equal for everybody, but it isn't. I think I paid 45 and the neighbor of mine's got a house on the beach, who's got a nice place in mind, but he pays about 160. So there was that discrepancy going on. So that's about all I have to say for what it's worth. And I just thought maybe, some of you folks here might have thought some of the same thing. And I guess in ending, I would just like to thank all of you on the committee putting in no personal time and scratching your heads and not getting out of the middle.
No, not allowed.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I just like to make a suggestion, like Alan and Carrie, we can hear you really, really well, but for the rest of you, I know that you have important and good things to say, but we only catch little pieces because you're facing the opposite direction. And I would make a suggestion, maybe that if you stand and speak to us and to both, maybe then we could, that we could have more, we're here to participate, and if we can't hear you, it really puts us at an awkward position. Or maybe speakers or something, or microphone or whatever, but if you stand up, or if those two people there that speak really well, if they would maybe say what you are saying so that we get to know what you, because I know that you have important information to share with us, and that's why we're here, we want to hear.
That's a very good comment, and I think next time you'll see that we'll put the tables the other way, so everybody faces you as well.
Yeah.
That's why I came and sat here tonight, because you have to be able to see.
Thank you all.
Good comment.
It's just very difficult to pick up on it if we can't hear you, so, and we want to hear you.
Good.
Thank you
Just
for your
like to
time.
make a comment to this lady here, that if you do turn the tables that way, which you just thought might do, we'll supply the beer.
Sit down. Thank you. Is there any other questions? Any questions? Yes.
Was there a sheet or a discussion about the fire department? I never heard that.
Yes, there was. That was at the last meeting.
Oh, okay, I wasn't able to.
If you go onto the website,
Yeah.
the regionalconnections.ca, you will, RUS regional. Yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
I've been on there, so
Okay.
I guess I just have to look up that meeting then.
Yeah, you do. Yeah.
Was that all sorted out?
Sorry. The adopted sheets from last meeting are also available at the.
Oh,
Yeah. So you can go and read what was adopted. Yeah.
all right.
Is everybody here, have you all looked at the website? No, it is there.
Okay.
Can you post questions on there?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, you have to register and then you can ask questions. Yeah.
Well, I'd just like to thank, we've got, I think, way more people here tonight. Hope you can hear me now. I'm working on it. More people than we've had on the previous meetings of this committee. So I can understand why we weren't thinking there'd be this many people. If you've got a minute and you want to let us know what it would take to see this many people or more at the next meeting, I think we'd all like to hear them. You know, like, I mean,
And younger people.
yeah, yeah, like, we're interested in ensuring that we're engaging. So we're not trying to have all of Okanagan, these aren't supposed to be open houses, so really, they're open meetings, but the open houses come later. But I think we're definitely interested in, you know, how do we make these meetings more attractive? So you said, talk louder, we'll do that. Now, you can also tell us, how do we get you coming next month? We'd like to hear that as well.
I think.
Bye, just a minute. One at a time,
Participation
please.
is great, like sometimes you have a particular topic and maybe if it's, we hear it and you open it up for 1 or 2 minutes for a question or whatever. Getting people involved makes them want to come out. But if you're just sitting and you can't hear and you can't participate and there's an hour goes by, you had a question. You know, with that kind of.
Well, I think.
Just bear in mind,
Done
please.
it tonight is, the way it is because you're having your committee meeting. Which is fine. And we're kind of the onlookers, and sometimes you want to get in there and get into the fray. But, you know, I think it's a good, maybe a little bit of change.
You have to remember too, you guys, is that with the exception of Matt and the consultants, we're all just residents here to volunteer to come and partake. So we want to learn from you, and if we can help and talk louder, that's what we'll do it.
I think you have to.
So let's work together.
I think you have to understand one thing about the function of this committee is to review all the data and endorse it. And then to allow the public to ask questions afterwards. We want to stay with that format because it works. Everybody in these tables, understand the process we're trying to fulfill, get the information to the public. And when we get to the next phase, which is the consultation period, we hope that everybody in OK Falls comes to it. But they will come there with the idea of having all the true information that the corporation would or wouldn't support. So, that's your buddy, sir. Just say your name, if you wouldn't mind, just say your name. Sure. And are you in the incorporated study area?
My name is Richard Knox, and I am in the study area.
Thank you.
I wanted to speak about community, because that's what we are doing here. We as a community. Community is the Latin, the ity is the individual, it's what we have in common. So as we sit here, we come to listen to you, and we're looking forward to our 8 o'clock time when we get to speak, because there is a bit of a droning on going over the same issue again and again. So we would like it to be a little bit more specific. I realize it's not easy to be simple, but some specificity would be welcomed by the community of which you guys are a part of.
Yeah.
So we would love to be here for this. And we know it's not here for entertainment. We're not looking for someone telling jokes. So I'm going to say my little piece, because I feel rather naive tonight being here, kind of realizing what you guys are doing. This is not a simple task. My goodness gracious. It's not a simple task. And so I'm very impressed with how patient you all are with each other, with the process. And it really, it reminds me of what is possible in community. It's an amazing thing. So my little part is that in the 2022 study, right? 2022 study for Area D. There was a considerable amount of money spent on that study. I haven't heard one mention of anything that was in that, which is fine, doesn't matter. But the way that the findings of that committee was presented to the public was immature, was adolescent. Everybody in Okanagan Falls received a little package in the mail. It was full of 9 different pieces of paper, not one number on the paper, not one listing at the front to tell you what was going on in that. So my expectation of this committee, as a community member, what I have in common with you all is that when the time comes to present it to the community in a written form, that is presented professionally. And there is some care and understanding of how difficult it is to communicate this kind of stuff that you get in the mail. The 2022 mailing was embarrassing.
Well, I can't speak to that, sir, but
I know, I'm not talking to you. And the person who is responsible knows who I'm talking to.
Well, we don't want to go there.
I'm not going there.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is that was embarrassing. And finally, what I want to reiterate is that seeing this going on, what you guys are doing, completely overrides everything from the 2022 study. This feels very solid and informative. Thank you. So thank you very much. And we all will be back next time.
Good. Yeah. Look forward to it. Anything else? Anybody else? Bob.
Yeah, Bob Daly. I just want to say that Chairman Wilson, he made a very strong point right from the start of this whole process.
that it's an impartial process. And you continue to make that standpoint. And I think it's respectful of people who are on both sides of the fence and those who sit and respect that. And it's very much appreciated.
Thank you, Bob. Appreciate that.
Sean,
Sorry.
Yes, I live in Oak Mountain Falls.
Okay.
I just want to come back to the one service area, the Parks Recreation and Cemetery service line. I think it's really important that we're trying to capture exactly what that service area is. We've lumped it, 3 services, into one bulletin. So with the cemetery, it's very different from Parks and Rec. Even Rec is very different from Parks. And I know you mentioned right at the beginning that we kind of chunk out services. But I think we have to be very cognizant of what's reflected in that beginning part about regional parks versus parks that as a taxpayer we've been paying for how many years that we've lived here. So I think we really have to do, I know you've already endorsed it, but I think we do need to have a second look at that one. I feel strongly about that.
Okay. Thank you.
Support that. I mean, the park number was slightly off, the definition of the parks, we're not sure how accurate that is. And as a park user and a recreation user, I'm very passionate about this.
Okay,
As
thank you.
well as the economic development one. I was very involved with that economic development in the community service office in the transition. And it was a horrible thing to go through. I was a staff member at that time. So thank you, Matt, for actually engaging me as we move forward as a director. So there's 2 things, sorry, I'm very passionate about. So it's an opportunity. And credit to all of you. I know that church a long time, I was involved in that 26 states, I think. So I think Sherry was also involved in. So this is the building process and it's continuously evolving. So I appreciate your commitment that you're putting in. And I would have to certainly Richard, it's not a piece of task.
Okay, thank you very much. Anything else? Okay, seeing none, I will bring this meeting to a close. We're 7 minutes early, but we can handle it. Thank you very much, everybody. Thanks, baby. Good job.